SpongeBob SquarePants Mysteries, Ooze in the Ocean. Chapter 8. Glowing green ooze? That butler handed us a tip hotter than the griddle at the Krusty Krab. Just when I thought we hit a dead end, we spotted a wide-open boulevard of a lead. Sure, the Flying Dutchman's alibi was solid, even scaring Squilliam not skulking around the Shady Shoals rest home. On the other hand, could he have been the one to leave green slime behind Squilliam's house? Somehow I doubted it. Didn't seem like the Flying Dutchman's style to mess around in the yard. He pops in, scares you, and pops out. He's efficient, see? Sticks to his plan and gets it done. Still, I couldn't cross him off my list of suspects just yet. But now I had a clue, and I planned to find out. I was as determined as Plankton trying to get his tiny green mitts on the Krabby Patty formula. Cutterworth coasted out of the room in his unflappable manner. The second he was gone, SpongeBob turned to Patrick excited. "Did you hear that, Patrick?" SpongeBob squealed. "I sure did," Patrick said, nodding sadly. "A tasty goober nut butter isn't available at Bargain Mart. Aww." "Not that!" SpongeBob cried. "The part about the trail of glowing green ooze outside! Come on! We've got to hurry and check it out before Carwood cleans it up!" He jumped to his feet and turned to go. "Wait!" Patrick said. SpongeBob stopped. "Aren't you forgetting something?" "What?" SpongeBob asked, looking around. "We haven't interviewed Squilliam about the robbery yet," Patrick reminded him. "How are we supposed to write our article for the Bikini Bottom Gazette if we haven't even talked to the victim?" SpongeBob made an impatient face. "Patrick, we're not going to write an article." "Has it been cancelled?" Patrick asked, surprised. "Darn fickle newspaper editors! So we came all this way for nothing." "Patrick, we're just pretending to be newspaper reporters, remember?" "Oh yeah," Patrick said, having trouble keeping up. "We're detectives, reporters, and actors. A real triple threat." "Now come on, let's get out of here." Patrick headed toward the door. "Not that way," SpongeBob said. "Squilliam will see us. We've got to go through the window." They ran to a window, turned the golden latch, and slid the window open. SpongeBob jumped through, landing in the yard below. Patrick followed him. They hurried around the base of the building, scanning the ground, searching for the green ooze. "Maybe the butler already cleaned it up," Patrick said. "He's quick. That sandwich came in no time." "I don't think so," SpongeBob said, zipping along. "First, he had to do our dishes in the kitchen." At that very moment, in Squilliam's huge kitchen full of gleaming appliances, Cutterworth was finishing washing the plate in two glasses SpongeBob and Patrick had dirtied. Even though Squilliam had equipped his kitchen with the latest in dishwashing technology, Cutterworth preferred washing dishes the old school way by hand. As he set the sparkling plate in the drying rack, the chef came up to him, rubbing her hands on a towel. "So," she said, "did those reporters enjoy their snack?" "I believe so," Cutterworth said, removing the rubber gloves he'd worn while cleaning up. "Did they say anything specific?" the chef asked, fishing for compliments. "Yes," the butler said. He set the gloves on the rack to dry. "Well?" the chef asked impatiently. "What did they say exactly? Tell me everything!" The butler turned to her with one eyebrow raised. "What do you care? They're just newspaper reporters, not King Neptune." "Oh, well, excuse me for taking pride in my work," the chef said, turning away angrily. "Fine," Cutterworth sighed. "The one who ordered the sandwich said your goober nut butter was fantastic." She turned back, beaming with pleasure. "Really? It's an old family recipe, you know." "Yes. So you told me many, many times," the butler sniffed. Would you like some goober nut butter on an English muffin? She offered. With a nice cup of tea? Cutterworth's face relaxed a tiny bit. Why not? He said, sitting down. That green slime isn't going anywhere, and Mr. Fancyson is busy with the police officers. Outside, SpongeBob and Patrick had almost completely circled Squilliam's house. Having removed their disguises, they were bent over staring at the ground, trying to make sure they didn't miss a single detail. Patrick sat up straight with his hands on his back, stretching. Oh man, all this bending over is tough, he groaned. The staring's hard too. My eyes are so tired, they're starting to see green. Green? SpongeBob asked, straightening up. Where? Patrick pointed at a spot on the ground a few feet away from the house. There! He rubbed his eyes. It looks slimy too. My eyes must be seriously strained. SpongeBob rushed over to the spot Patrick had pointed at. Patrick! You found it! A trail of green ooze! SpongeBob bent down to examine the slime closely. The thing we've been looking for! Oh yeah, Patrick said. He'd gotten so involved in circling the house that he'd forgotten exactly what they were searching for. Once again, he worried that he didn't have what it took to be a private eye, and he remembered Barnacle Boy's warning. If a crime-fighting partner made a mistake, the whole partnership could be over, just like that. Examining the line of goo with his magnifying glass, SpongeBob said, I think this matches the glowing green substance we saw behind the Shady Shoals rest home, but I can't be sure. Patrick, stand behind me and cast your shadow on the slime. Patrick sat behind SpongeBob, who was still crouching over the trail. Like this? Yes, SpongeBob cried. In the darkness of Patrick's shadow, the green ooze glowed green, just like the stuff behind the rest home. It's glowing! Where'd it come from? Patrick asked. The Flying Dutchman? SpongeBob shook his head. I don't think so. This is a different shade of green. I wish we had a sample of the green gunk from the Flying Dutchman ship for comparison. You mean like this? Patrick asked, holding up a blob of green muck. Patrick! SpongeBob exclaimed, delighted. You took a sample when we were on the ship! Kind of. I thought it was ice cream, but it isn't. Ugh, Patrick said as he made a face of disgust. SpongeBob scraped the goo off Patrick's hand into a small evidence bag. Then he held the bag down by the trail of green ooze in the sand. See? The colors are different. He pulled another empty evidence bag out of his pocket. I'll collect a small sample of this stuff too. I like samples, Patrick said, thinking of the free spoonfuls of ice cream they gave customers at Goofy Goober's ice cream party boat. Just as SpongeBob was scooping some of the green goo into the evidence bag, a voice called out, Hey! SpongeBob and Patrick looked up to see Officer Bruce and Officer Cheryl, the two police officers glaring at them as they marched around Squilliam's house, coming closer with each step. Just what do you think you're doing? Bruce shouted, pointing accusingly. Looks to me they're tampering with evidence, Cheryl yelled. I'd say removing evidence, Bruce said. Cheryl stopped to address Bruce. Removing is tampering. Bruce stopped too. Okay, but it's the worst kind of tampering. Well, maybe next to destroying evidence. So? Cheryl asked. So it's worth mentioning, Bruce argued. If someone's removing evidence, you don't just say they're tampering with evidence. You say they're removing evidence. See what I mean? Why must you always correct me? Cheryl complained. It's called fish planing, and I'm tired of it. Fine, Bruce conceded. I'm sorry. Now let's get those two evidence removers. But when they turned back to look at the spot where SpongeBob had been collecting the sample of green slime, the two private eyes were gone. Hey, where'd they go? Bruce cried. Cheryl strolled over to the trail of green gunk and looked down at it. Well, they left most of the evidence, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Bruce joined her. He looked down at the trail. I guess you're right. Should we collect a sample? Sure, Cheryl said. You go right ahead. Looks gross to me. Ew. Putting some gloves on and taking an evidence bag out of his pocket, Bruce squatted down next to the line of green slime. He opened the bag and grabbed a sample, but the ooze stuck to his glove. He tried shaking it off, but ended up just putting the whole glove in the bag. Yuck! Well, I'm pretty sure we've got all the evidence we need. You think that snooty butler will give us lunch? Cheryl shrugged. It's worth a try. They headed back inside Squilliam's mansion. Meanwhile, SpongeBob and Patrick were still sprinting away from the cops, SpongeBob holding the evidence bag in his hand. They were both breathing hard. Finally, Patrick came to a stop. He leaned over and put his hands on his knees, gasping. SpongeBob! Stop! I think we lost them. SpongeBob stopped too and looked around. He didn't see any police chasing them. I think you're right, he gasped. They both just stood there for a moment, getting their breath back. So now what are we gonna do? Patrick asked. Well, SpongeBob said, thinking, we've got the ooze sample, right? He held up the evidence bag with the green slime inside. Right, Patrick said. So the next logical step is to analyze it and see what it might tell us about who left the trails behind at Shady Shaw's restaurant and Squilliam's house. Makes sense, Patrick agreed. How? I'm not sure, SpongeBob said, but I figure a scientific analysis should probably be done by a scientist. A scientist? Patrick asked. You mean like Sandy? SpongeBob brightened. Yes, like Sandy! That's a brilliant idea, Patrick! We'll take the sample to Sandy for scientific analysis, and she can compare the two samples to see if the new one matches the one from the Flying Dutchman ship. Okay, Patrick said, and he remembered something he'd been wanting to ask his friend. Hey SpongeBob? Yeah? Do you think the robbery at Squilliam's house has anything to do with the mysterious green ooze? Shrugging, SpongeBob said, I don't know. If it does, I can't see the connection. I mean, what's an antique monobrow comb got to do with glowing green slime? I don't know, Patrick admitted. It just seems kind of, weird. Come on, SpongeBob said, hurrying off towards Sandy's trade home. Let's get the sample to Sandy for analysis right away. We don't want it to go bad. He broke into a sprint. How can he tell when the green ooze goes bad? Patrick asked. Also, do we have to run? Stay tuned for Chapter 9, coming up soon.